Hi everyone, my name is Eric Straight. I am a certified sommelier with the Court of Master Sommeliers, as well as holding the WSET diploma. And I am coming to you today on behalf of Saratoga Eagle Sales and Service to do a virtual tasting on a few of the wines that are new to their portfolio and hopefully help out clients when tasting in person is a little bit more difficult these days. So on that note, the first wine up is going to be from Domaine de L'Amandine. This is their Côte Rhone Village-Seguret Vintage 2017. So Seguret is one of 17 individual villages that are allowed to append their name to the appellation of Côte Rhone Village if all that food is sourced within that village. Just a quick note on this winery. It was founded in 1968 by Jean-Pierre Verdu, whose family had previously worked in the wine industry. Domaine de L'Amandine is actually one of the first producers to do estate bottling in this region. Jean-Pierre is still making the wines, but he has been joined now by his son-in-law, Alex Suter, who helps him out in everything from the grape growing process to the fermentation and aging of the wines. And Alex's father had actually helped run the winery back in the day at Rustenburg in South Africa. Now, no indication on their website really if they practice organic or biodynamic principles, but when you read about how they grow their grapes and how they treat their wines, they do give indication as to doing everything according to phases of the moon, the natural cycle of the vine. So I am under the impression that these wines are made under both organic and biodynamic practices. Just a couple notes on the Southern Rhone Valley in the 2017 vintage. So this area or this region is generally characterized by a more Mediterranean climate, right? So you're looking at things like warm, dry summers, moving into a more mild and wet winter. So no extremes in temperature or conditions really that you would find in a more continental climate. All this is mitigated by this northerly wind, which is on the cooler side called the Mistral, and this helps relegate humidity. So it also helps keep away things like rot and other fungal diseases. So Seguret, specifically this village here, composed primarily of 3 different types of soil. You've got clay, limestone, and sandstone. And as I'll discuss in a second with 2017 vintage, most of the grapes were not sourced from clay soils for this cuvee. Clay soils tend to impart a little bit more of a tannic wine and can lead to a more full-bodied richness. The 2017 vintage followed 2 amazing vintages, both 15 and 16, which were kind of exemplary. 17 had a couple of struggles though. So April was a bit more cooler than expected. And this led to a condition called colure, which affects the setting of the berried fruit. It's or grapes that are a little bit more early budding are a little bit more susceptible to this. So Grenache was particularly affected. And then summer came along where we had periods of drought. So drought will impart conditions that kind of emphasizes maybe a little bit more tannic bitterness and astringency, which would play more into the hands of grapes like Syrah. So when you're doing a blend, as is here with Grenache and Syrah, it was mitigating those 2 circumstances that was most tough for a lot of producers. This cuvee itself is 60% Syrah, 40% Grenache. All of the grapes are destemmed prior to fermentation with some pressed juice added back to give a little bit more structure to the wines. Aging is done entirely in 100% concrete vats that have been lined with epoxy. So people are always questioning, like, what's the purpose of concrete? I thought it was stainless steel or oak. Concrete is actually super common in this region. And is actually a practice that's been used for many years. So concrete being porous, it kind of lets the wine breathe and oxygenate as you would with wood. However, it doesn't impart wood flavors. So let's just move on to a couple of tasting notes. You're not really able to see it here, but this wine is more of a ruby core fading to a watery meniscus, or I'd say maybe thin ruby rim. Viscosity doesn't look anything out of control. I'd say medium, maybe medium plus. On the nose, lots of like really ripe, sun-kissed red fruit here. So you're looking at things like fresh red raspberries, just like freshly picked strawberries and strawberry skin. You know, there are some secondary notes here. You get a little bit of white peppered spice, which I associate a little bit more with Grenache than I do with Syrah. Syrah I usually get more black pepper. Again, that fresh garage that's so typical of this region. Super clean on the nose, no indication of any oak. Again, this was done in 100% cement vats. But I would say that this is definitely a very fruit-driven wine. Lots of red fruit here. So on the palate, I'd say that tannins are fairly medium, maybe medium plus. Again, for a vintage that saw a drought in the summer, I would expect the tannins to be a little bit high here. But I think this is where L'Amandine actually shows great depth at winemaking, is that they chose and they selected their grapes and their harvest times at just the right points. This drink's super sound. I would say acid is medium plus. I think it lends that brightness and this refreshingness to this wine that's really highlighted by lots of those really bright sun-kissed red fruits on the nose. I will say though, I do get a little bit more like blackberry characteristics, almost like blackberry, like fresh blackberry jam on the palate, which I didn't get on the nose. So I have a little bit more of a black fruit characteristic on the palate as opposed to the nose, which was very red fruit driven. And there's also this very lingering kind of subtleness of like, almost like olive tapenade-ish thing going on the finishes also, which is super interesting because I think this gives this wine a little bit more complexity and doesn't just show it as a one-note fruit-driven wine. Alcohol is not warm at all, maybe a tad bit on the finish, but I think it's super well integrated. It says only 14% here, and I agree with that. And given global warming nowadays, 14% is the norm. Again, it does not show up as being pokey in any shape, way, or form. I think it's really well integrated. Just a really well done wine. Tannins, again, not too aggressive. I just wanted to make a note on the texture. They seem a little bit more kind of chalky and fine-grained and not coarse or astringent. So again, really well managed tannins here, especially given those drought conditions that we mentioned in the summer. I know not everybody is fans of points and everything, but for those of you that are interested, Robert Parker's Wine Advocate did give this wine 93 points. Wholesale pricing, I will have to double check this one, and I will make notes in the comment section below if I am wrong, but I believe this is $11.33 on one case, $10.67 on 3 cases, and these are 12-pack cases. So if you do get a chance, stop by your local retailer, ask them for this bottle, and enjoy.